I woke up that morning with a flutter in my chest, feeling that this would be the best day of my life. I had spent years dreaming of a wedding filled with love and laughter, a celebration of a union that promised a bright future. As I dressed, in my suit and straightened my tie, I could almost see the wonderful images I had envisaged. A bright, warm hall in New York City, the quiet murmur of well-wishers, and above all, Clara's dazzling smile as she walked down the aisle. But none of that prepared me for the nightmare that would soon ruin my dreams. I stepped inside the big hall, the air full of excitement and the quiet murmur of conversation. Every aspect had been set to perfection. The flowers were beautifully positioned, the lights bounced off polished surfaces, and sweet music played in the background. My heart swelled as I saw Clara, looking lovely in her wedding dress, every bit the vision of elegance and grace I had adored for so long. However, as I proceeded to meet our guests and exchange warm handshakes, an unpleasant discomfort started to creep in. Clara's parents sat at their table with tight postures and empty wine glasses, their expressions as cold as the polished stone around them. I wondered for a while if this was simply nerves or if something more was amiss. As I interacted with our friends and family, attempting to enjoy every moment of what was meant to be a cheerful celebration, I failed to notice the gloomy shift that was about to emerge. Without any warning, Clara broke through the joyous crowd and stormed toward me. Her face, once soft and inviting, was suddenly distorted with hatred, and her eyes blazed with a fury that left me frozen in disbelief. "You didn't serve my parents wine," she cried, her voice rebounding off the walls and silencing the merriment that had filled the chamber just seconds before. I tried to speak, stammering, "What do you mean?" But there was no time to digest her words. Before I could even gather my thoughts, her hand flew out, connecting sharply with my cheek. The sound of the hit was smothered only by the gasps and murmurs that erupted around us. In that terrible moment, the warm glow of the day was replaced by a burning humiliation that spread through my body like wildfire. I noticed the horror on my mother's face, the astonished gaze of our guests, each pair of eyes silently condemning me. Clara's voice, icy and unyielding, pierced through the tense quiet. "You have disgraced my parents. Apologize right now or go." Her words were decisive, and the sting of her slap seared far deeper than the physical pain. I looked around in bewilderment, feeling the weight of every critical gaze as I sought to understand the turmoil. The room, once filled with delight, now reverberated with whispers and disapproving glances. In that second, everything I had believed in, the promises of love and support, the hopes of a shared future, shattered before my eyes. With a heavy heart and wavering resolve, I turned away from Clara, leaving behind not only the celebration, but the very idea of a future I had held dear. Every step I took away from the hall felt laden with pain and betrayal. I could still sense the searing sting on my cheek, a reminder that this day, which was supposed to mark the beginning of a beautiful journey, had instead become the start of a sad spiral into isolation. The dazzling lights of New York City merged into a dim mirror of shattered dreams, and I was left alone, with a confused mind and a heart that ached with each breath. I pondered how a day meant to bring joy could turn so devastatingly wrong. And with each passing moment, the bitter truth set in. My wedding had become my worst nightmare. I kept walking through the crowded streets, my head racing with questions and my heart heavy with grief. I had expected joy and love, but unfortunately I was presented with harsh reality. A reality where the promises of yesterday were replaced by the sting of betrayal. The sight of Clara's outraged face, the sound of her accusation, and the harsh slap all looped in my mind like a vicious cycle. In that moment, I realized that, Even the most ideal plans could be ruined in a single instant, leaving nothing but a path of pain and remorse. This day, meant to be the start of forever, had ended in a way I never imagined possible, and I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. I knew that by revealing my truth, I was setting in motion a chain of circumstances that could no longer be reversed. The hours that followed were some of the longest of my life. Every ring of my phone sent a bolt of worry through me, but I stayed, silent, refusing to be lured back into the loop of deception that had destroyed our relationship. I kept recalling the day of the wedding, the sound of her words, the shock of her slap, the judgment in every observer's eyes. I allowed myself to experience every ounce of that pain. It was in that painful awareness that I found the strength to let go of what was left of my confidence in her. As midnight approached, the anger and anguish slowly began to mix into a resolve to take control over my destiny. I knew that this was my breaking point. The moment I determined to no longer be a victim of Clara's falsehoods. I promised myself that I would use this anguish as a stepping stone towards reconstructing my life on my own terms, free from the shadows of deceit and betrayal. In that calm, lonely moment, I recognized that breaking point was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where I would no longer allow anyone to twist my reality. The message I had sent was simply the first step in regaining my voice, my dignity, and my life. As I sat there, feeling the quiet hum of the metropolis outside and the quiet resolve forming in my heart, I realized that even though the agony was genuine, I was ready to face the future, equipped with the truth and a determination that no amount of gaslighting could ever break. I sat in my study with a heavy heart, yet a fierce determination began to build. As I glanced at the information on my laptop screen, I knew that addressing Clara personally would only lead to more falsehoods and more of her twisted remarks. Instead, I decided that the truth needed to be exposed to everyone, just as she had once exposed me. With Marcus's constant support and the accumulating evidence of her treachery in my hands, I set out to take back control of my life. I began to plot a gathering that would serve as the platform for my revelation. I spent hours on the phone and behind my computer, inviting friends, family, and even a handful of Clara's closest confidants, those who had seen the real her, the woman who had hidden behind a facade of charm and tenderness. I carefully arranged the aspects of the event, choosing a familiar site where everyone would feel comfortable, where the mood would be charged with truth. I wanted the environment to be both intimate and public, a site where the whispers of betrayal might ultimately be converted into loud, unmistakable voices. The day of the gathering came with a mix of excitement and dread. I entered the venue, my pulse hammering in my chest, and took a deep breath as I glanced over the audience slowly filling the room. People I had known since childhood, colleagues who had noticed my metamorphosis, and even Clara's personal friends, now, curious about what was unveiling, filled the area with murmurs of expectancy. I felt like every eye in the room was waiting for the moment when I would finally speak my truth. Clara, under the assumption that I was coming to apologize, appeared as expected, collected as ever. Her eyes, however, rapidly widened when she noticed the resolute look on my face. I could feel the uncertainty flicker over her features for just a second before she concealed it with feigned serenity. But it was too late. The stage was set. I stepped up to the microphone, my hands quivering. Slightly as I adjusted it, the audience grew silent, and for a moment, time itself seemed to pause. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I said, my voice steady despite the tempest screaming inside me. "I asked you here to clear the air and to discuss some realities that have been buried for far too long." Every word was measured, each syllable carefully prepared to express the raw agony and betrayal I had felt. Then, with a deep breath, I hit play on the remote Marcus had given me. On the projector behind me, A series of photos and documents flared to life. Images of bank transfers, copies of SMS conversations, and emails that painted a damning picture. The proof was undeniable. Clara had transferred a huge sum of money out of our joint account a week before our wedding. The transactions displayed a pattern that was too deliberate to be an accident. Alongside these, evidence of her secret relationship with Eric Donovan, her ex-boyfriend, a man who had once been a shadow in the background of her life, surfaced. Shouts erupted from the gathering as they took in the horrifying sight. I watched as Clara's face turned pale, her confident mask disintegrating in front of everyone. "This is the truth," I continued, my voice ringing with a mix of grief and resolve. "This is the truth about the woman you all believed you knew.